thanks for giving up your time and sharing today. Much appreciated.
Oh,
And
no
yeah,
problem.
I think people will join as as they come in. Yeah. So, and I'm certainly here to actually listen in and see what you're talking about.
My ego does not really need an audience, so um, I'm happy to
Well,
talk.
you've got one. We're both here. So yeah.
Yeah, I think my wife stole a steward's drink one time at a party, so I think that might have been that was some other time, of course. Well, I'm happy to start out. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present again. And I realize that I have a highly niche kind of business because I am rather unusual. I'm basically a mental health counselor that became enchanted with the idea of being able to use technology to provide services to my clients. So I don't know if anybody's heard this story. I don't think I told it the first time around, but I'll tell you guys. Um, I still have a brick and mortar business where we see clients that are court ordered for behaving badly, like driving under the influence or domestic violence or underage drinking. And so the majority of our clients are called forensic clients. They're not coming in because they want me to help them. They're coming in because they have to. And the court says you can choose wherever you want to go, but Mr. Wilson is one of our approved providers for these kinds of educational services to try to, keep them from going down a path of criminal behavior. So I would say about 10 years ago, I discovered Moodle because I had a lot of my clients were people who either worked out of town or were long-haul truck drivers, lived in extremely remote areas in Idaho out in the mountains. And so I had to find some sort of a solution to provide the services so that they would not get in trouble with the court, because they would typically come to one of my Saturday classes and then for, say, a drink driving program. And then the next week they may or may not make it. And so what happened was that extended their probationary period pretty significantly. So they said, well, is there some way that you can either mail me or send me my assignments, etc.? And so I spent about 6 months looking around, and then I discovered the field of learning management systems, but at the time it wasn't very advanced. And so I set it up, and I was surprised that and I couldn't even get any hosting services because people said, oh, we can't put that on our server because it'll crash our server. So finally I got, I think it's Moodle Rooms now. So I ran into Tom at Moodle Rooms, and he hosted me for my first 3 or 4 years and helped me out providing, the upgrades to Moodle. And so and all I really did was develop content. And I'll tell you that I've never taken a computer class in my life. I'm all self-taught. I'm a mental health counselor. That's what I do. But I'm a very good writer. So I was able to develop content that people liked. And then, over the years, I've added more and more different types of content. And as Moodle has evolved, so have I. In other words, the types of plugins have really dramatically increased, and each one of those has been, sort of an arsenal for me that I've used in my work. So I finally settled on Lesson after trying Book and other, kinds of plugins, and I'm very happy with Lesson. And I wouldn't even mind, doing how to, another little mini presentation on just setting up a lesson, because I think it's very valuable, particularly because of the high demand that I have from government agencies to provide proof that the person who actually, that the person who's ordered to take the course is actually the one on the course. So we developed an identity module that we haven't published to anybody. But what it does is that they have to answer questions initially about themselves. Let's say if you were doing online banking, we did that exact model where somewhere along the course, a random question would pop up and say, what's your favorite color, or what is your, where did you go to high school, what's your mother's maiden name, etc. So Lesson enables me to provide content based upon their previous choices. And since The reason I'm doing this on underage drinkers is that underage drinkers are my main customers. I get referrals from colleges, um, international schools, anybody who has 18 and 19-year-old kids in an educational institution, and I have no contracts. They just refer them to me because they don't have anything like that in their organization, or they typically have used something created by their counseling staff, but it was inadequate, or it was boring, or they didn't like it, or it was, for some reason everybody complained about it. So I actually used Lesson to develop a relapse prevention course for alcoholics who needed a liver transplant. If you want to get long tail, that's me. I do highly customizable courses for orphaned clients, orphaned people who need a highly specific kind of solution, and that Lesson provides me the flexibility to just modularly insert content specific to their particular issue or problem. For example, I saw the last presentation by Cobalt LMS, and I really like what they're doing with their, and that agency that they're working for, the College for Obesity, and they're doing that. So that's kind of what I'm in. Is I'm into behavioral health. I think that Moodle, if we can get people to learn to love Lesson, sort of like Dr. Strangelove, and embrace the lesson, they will find out that it's really a powerful tool for leading people down a path of education and self-awareness, and it's done in a non-confrontational way, because as I go through my presentation, I'll show you why that's important to us. So why focus on underage drinkers? Well, first of all, for me, it's one of my primary clients. I would say 99% of underage drinkers are not alcoholics. They're not chronic alcohol abusers, but they're just 18 and 19, and that sort of says it all. And so I usually get a wave of referrals after the 4th of July, after they've gone to a resort about 90 miles from here called McCall, Idaho, and it's a resort town, and all of the wealthy people have cabins, and they all have kids who go to the cabin who invite their friends, and they all drink, watch the fireworks, and there's about 50 or 60, I'd say 50 or 60 citations for underage drinking. I know the judge up there, I know the probation officer up there, and they really don't have a program for those kids to go to, so they send them to me, and no matter where that person has come from, I'm able to have them log into my 4-hour underage drinkers course. So typically I go where the demand is, and this is my biggest demand. So, and I hate to think of it as a market, but it really is. This is not going to change very much, but there's about 10.4 million people in the U.S. between 12 and 20 that have had more than they probably should. And as they get older, they typically, by age 18, over 70% of that population has had at least one drink of alcohol. But the mean for an 18-year-old who drinks, because there are some that don't, they typically drink more than the average person per occasion. If you have a couple of pints for an adult, depends on your age, but at my age, I'm only supposed to have one. Other adults can have up to 2 or 3 who are younger than me. But if you think about an 18-year-old who weighs about 125, 130 pounds, 5 standard drinks is a lot of alcohol in their system. They're probably bumping up against the blood alcohol that would make them illegal to drive for sure, but also likely close to 0.15, which is way more impaired. So like I said, I've been using Moodle since 2004. So when I first started, it was for my, it was really, I call it my truck driver client. It's for my long haul truck drivers so they could stay out of trouble with the law. This has become more and more important because, again, my clientele is changing. And again, I would say that over half of my clients are underage drinkers. And we know that alcohol is the primary health risk for these individuals. And typically it has to do with risky behavior. So they say that alcohol kills teenagers more than all other drugs combined, including opiates. But opiates is making a run for its first position. So the kinds of risks that we are looking at, and me as a prevention specialist, meaning that I don't really treat people, but I provide information in order, and it's usually like self-help online, about the risks associated with their pattern of drinking, and that's what we're going to be addressing in the lesson. So there's over 5,000 people, minors under age 21, die each year from alcohol-related crashes, homicides, suicides, poisoning, falls, burns, and drowning, and serious injuries. So the increased health risks are for physical and sexual assault, typically after there's a high level of intoxication, and they're more likely to be a victim of a physical or sexual assault. Also, the new research indicates that brain development problems, like with probably the part of the brain that's most affected would be the front of the brain, the frontal cortex, which is responsible for planning and decision making. And I like to refer to it as the monkey brain versus the lizard brain. The lizard brain is the amygdala, which is in the center of the brain, that it basically just responds. The amygdala is responsible for sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and the frontal brain or the forebrain is responsible for telling the amygdala, don't do that. But what we find is that alcohol at a high, as the level of blood concentration increases, reduces the impact of the frontal lobe's ability to control the amygdala. So in other words, it disinhibits the brain. And when you have an 18-year-old, it doesn't take much to disinhibit. So there are many, many theories, and there's been a lot of research starting actually in 1990s on how do we change these drinking behaviors. Well, first they started with Nancy, the just say no approach. That didn't work. Lecturing, scare tactics didn't work. School assemblies don't work. Putting people in classes don't work. And the single most effective thing that actually works, and there's research that supports this, is that changing how an underage drinker believes about how much peers drink or don't drink can significantly reduce underage drinking. So providing personalized normative feedback, and that's what I've been able to get Moodle to do. Personalized normative feedback is providing information about where an individual student's drinking compares to the drinking of peers. And what happens is that we know is that most underage drinkers vastly overestimate the amount, frequency, and consequences of their peers drinking. In other words, they think that peers drink way more than they do, and that their drinking isn't as bad as theirs. But on average, 5 or 6 drinks is pretty standard for an underage drinker, and oddly enough, even at their age, they seem to have pretty good tolerance, and that tolerance starts changing as they get older. So let's talk about what personalized normative feedback means. If you were to take the lesson module, there's 2 types of pages that you can use. One is the standard true, false, multiple choice questions called the question page. And the other kind of page is the content page, which provides something that might be called a branching algorithm, if you will. So the feedback and content that the person will link to after a question depends entirely on which branch or path the student takes. So if I were to ask a student, we're going to give you a choice of here are your choices. I drink more than most people. I drink the same as most people. I drink less than most people, or the same, more or less. Depending on what their choice is, then we would give them feedback about what they've said to us, and ask them, you said you drink less than most people, yet the reason you're taking this class is because you have a citation for underage drinking. and then they would have to, another set of questions that would lead them down the path of saying, your questions don't seem to make sense since you have, you do actually have a problem. But what we've done is, rather than do an approach that is confrontational in nature, we're just going to give them feedback about what their choices really mean as compared to other people. So let's assume we're going to log into this is my course login page. Nothing unusual about it, except, we have a system where people go to our website, they check. We use ZenCart as a shopping cart, and the shopping cart presents a list of courses that they need to take. And there's some that have been designed for specific schools, like we don't have a contract with Santa Barbara Community College, but they said, we'd like to send people to your course rather than our in-house course because they don't like our in-house course. So I said, fine. And so it's basically a handshake. And that's how I do business. I just say, I don't want to contract with you. I don't want to have responsibility, but I can tell you that if you want to send clients to me, we will provide proof of completion in the form of a certificate. So we use the certificate module. We don't use badges. We don't use anything other than a student can actually print out their own certificate once they're done. And that certificate is like gold to these students because that gets them off of some kind of probation with the student conduct office, or that lets them stay in their residence hall, because some of these students, if they don't complete this class, they don't get to live in the residence hall. They have to find someplace else, which means that mommy and daddy will not be happy that they have to go find someplace else to live at a higher cost. So this is one of our accounts that we have for testing. And you can see that it's called a brief self-assessment and personalized feedback report. Below are the other classes that the student has taken. And what we've done is I think last year I presented this. We sort of did a modification to gamify the classes. So when a person completed a lesson, they get this feedback. This is a version of my Moodle. So when people log in, this is what they see. We call it my course outline and progress report. So we also give them feedback about how much time they've spent in the lesson, where they are, if they completed, and their score. And it's a very simple feedback. So I'm using the process of feedback, well, once again, but through the gamification process, where at the end, people actually work harder to get 100%. When we compared this model with our old standard Moodle model, and getting feedback and a gold star seems to enhance their motivation to pay attention and actually do the course seriously. We also locked them out so they can't go back and mess with their original answers. We had a lot of trouble last year, the year before, where people would get to the course and they'd see the course outline, they saw they got 80%. They would want to go back and get a higher score. And so we just decided to lock them out because they would spend hours and hours and hours, and which is not good for our work processes. We like to get clients in and out and completed and reported to their school. So this is the course. Probably, let's see if I can't read it from here. So this explains what the course is about. It's very brief. It says this is basically a content page, and when we set up the content page, you notice right here that says continue. That is actually the mandatory content that's required. So we just decided to put the word continue, because otherwise we would have to revert to question page, and question page doesn't work as well for us. So this is really a content page. And so you see that this button is actually part of a branch table, and that's the old term for it, but it's actually, you can have, I think it's up to 5 different choices, and you'll see them later on. So it tells them what they're going to do, that they need to spend 20 to 30 minutes, and that just hit the continue button. So that continue button only has one choice. And that choice leads them to this particular, the next content page. So now here, we've set up this content page to provide information about calculating their drinking. And in this particular page, we're asking about how much they drink per week. We've given them equivalents so they can get a pretty accurate, a fix on how much they drink and the explanation of what a standard drink is. Also that they now have 5 choices. 1, 2, 3, yeah, now have 5 choices in telling us, okay, how much do you really drink? Now that you've had the chart, you figured it out. So you want to tell us, and so far, have you noticed that we haven't said, no, that's the right answer, that's the wrong answer? We think the research shows that giving people right and wrong for this particular approach to helping people change their behavior doesn't work. We've actually implemented part of the philosophy from motivational interviewing theory, which says that giving people feedback is much better than telling them that's a good choice or that's a bad choice. So what we're doing is saying, okay, so what you're telling me is that you drink 8 to 14 drinks per week. What does that actually mean for you? Well, what it means is that if we compare your drinking to adults surveyed in the United States about how much they drank in a week, your drinking is, there's only 81% of all males and 94% of all females in the United States that drink less than you, which means you're probably up there in the 19th percentile, or actually, no, you're in the 81st percentile, excuse me, of all males, which is pretty high. So that there's not very many people that actually drink more than you. So this particular approach is called personalized normative feedback, and we do it with a lot of different dimensions, if you will. So one dimension is number of drinks. And this dimension can also be used for pre-test and post-test. So let's say that when they first come in, say it's over a full period of 4 weeks, the first week is the week where they get the questionnaire, and we used to do this. This is actually a technique used to get people to change their behavior. It's an intervention for college students. But I think I'm the only one that's actually put it in the Moodle format. I'm using Lesson to do the same thing. So they actually have paper and pencil forms, and so when they come in for their second week, they get us as, well, you completed your questionnaire last week. This week, we're going to tell you what that means. And we're going to tell you what that means, and then you tell us what you think about that. But here, we found that whether we sit down and talk to them about it, or whether we do this self-help, delivered at any time asynchronously, it doesn't make any difference in its effectiveness. Apparently, both are just as effective. Okay, so the next dimension we want to talk about is your blood alcohol concentration during a typical drinking occasion. So if a person typically drinks, if they weigh 150 pounds and if they have 5 drinks, odds are that the blood alcohol in an hour is going to start hitting 1.1 to 1.5. So obviously over the legal limit, and in the United States, 0.08 or above is considered legally intoxicated, and would put you in a position for getting a driving under the influence citation and $5,000 out the window, because that's what a DUI typically costs. So if we have a little calculator here you can't see because I didn't have time to take a picture of it, but we have a blood alcohol calculator that they put in their weight, and there's tons of these on the internet. Put in your weight, the number of drinks you had over what period of time, and calculates your blood alcohol concentration as if though you had taken a breath test. So we would assume that the person is going to pick one of these after they've done the calculation. And again, we're getting them to start thinking about what it means to have that kind of drinks. Your highest level of intoxication when you drank the most in the last 6 months. So again, using the calculator, they go and find out typically most 18-year-olds that go to college, they're freshmen, they're typical binge drinkers. They're going to drink 0.15 and above pretty easily. But yet again, they don't have any of the symptoms of alcohol abuse or alcohol dependence. And abuse obviously means that they have more than, well, not obviously for everyone. Alcohol abuse is defined in the U.S. as having more than one alcohol-related consequence or problem like health, finances, legal, financial, family, etc. So for a student who belongs to a fraternity in college, typically they hit 0.20 pretty often. And but if they get caught, then they have to go to the student conduct office and go through an assessment or actually take one of these courses. So this particular student typically drank, is telling us, says, you told us you drank 15 to 21 drinks per occasion. And here's some feedback about what that means. So here are the costs of 15 to 21 drinks. So if you saw all those 5 choices previously on the different branches or different path, if they took the lower path, obviously they would have spent less, or there would have been less financial consequences. So the higher the cost, the higher the number of drinks, of course, the more that they're going to be spending on alcohol. And this is just a simple feedback mechanism without any lecturing, without any threats of any kind. It just simply says, well, this is what you could have done with that money. Again, so you told us you drank 15 to 21 drinks per week. Well, how many calories is that? Well, it depends on what your preference is. For example, when I get a chance to go golfing, I try not to drink a Guinness stout before I go out and play golf. But about halfway through, the beer cart comes by, and it's probably a wise choice to know how many calories. And so the Michelob Ultra seems to be a good choice since I'm not going to be driving for another 2.5 hours. Here we go. So based on what you told us, and assuming you drank Budweiser, and again, we don't know exactly which beer they drank or what they were drinking, but most 18-year-olds don't have any money, and they typically drink the cheapest beer that they can find and the one with the highest alcohol because they're really drinking for effect. When I was in the military, I was an artillery officer, and we would have a phrase called fire for effect. That means everybody let go, everybody shoot your howitzers, and try to kill as much as you can on the target range. Luckily, I never had to go to active duty and do that. I became an Army psychologist, so that helped a bit with my lifespan. But here we're telling people, what does that mean? And then in the next frame, it tells us, okay, how much exercise are you going to need to burn that off? And here we give them some feedback. This is what you're going to have to do if you keep drinking at that rate. This is a real eye-opener for kids, especially the 18-year-olds. They go, oh my God, I didn't realize. And especially the females. And the females are actually catching up with the males in the amount that they drink. And females are particularly vulnerable to the effects of alcohol because the percentage of body fat is lower in males. And so females take, and they don't process alcohol as quickly as males do. So females are particularly vulnerable to, even at the same weight and the same alcohol consumption rate, to the problems from alcohol abuse. So again, if you take a look at this button here, I'm ready to continue. That could have been 5 buttons for 5 different choices. But we've decided to not make this tree so large that it just becomes unmanageable. And as I explained in my first presentation, I'm wondering, how to keep track of that, or how do you build a wireframe for what you're going to do. It can be pretty complicated, and that's why people shy away from this. But this was particularly suited to mine, and once I built it, I didn't have to do it again. And then what we have now is I have a model for obesity, smoking, exercise. So we should be able to come up with a lot of behavioral health issues that could be addressed with this feedback system. Okay, so how do we make it? Well, first thing you want to do is, I didn't even mention this, but before you do this, you want to get some sticky notes. and you want to get a whiteboard, and you want to put down all the pathways that you're going to create, because you're going to create a multitude of pathways, and it would be nice if you had all the low risk activities one color, middle risk activities another color, or pages, excuse me. So the content pages, you might want to, you're going to have another color for high risk. So I would divide them up into at least 3 categories. So then once you've got them on paper and you can see them on the whiteboard, transfer them to, a notepad, and then you've got, your algorithm in front of you, your map in front of you, basically. And then you can go in and start setting up lessons. What I suggest you do is do one first, and then go back, sleep on it, go back, because it'll give you a headache. The next thing is assign settings to the lesson. You want to decide, I think there's just a multitude of settings, and I would just try to keep it as simple as possible and not try to make it, do not try to get a finished product your first time around. Just do something that'll get you through the end and see, what you come up with, and experiment with it. But again, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing content pages for this particular model and not the question pages. So be sure that you select content. It'll ask you to add something. You want to add a content page. And when you set up a content page, this is what you wind up with. You'll have all of these choices down below, and each of these will take a different pathway. And each path will take you to different charts for high-risk folks versus a different chart for low-risk folks. And then there'll be a different chart of information. If you were to choose this, where would you fall relative to others? And here's the actual adding content pages or clusters for each choice. So again, each choice will have all these different settings that you want to go into. You can actually see the content that you're going to add. This could as well have been about smoking, could as well have been about unprotected sex, could have well been about intake of cholesterol, could have been about a number of things. But these are all health. I'm sure they can be adapted for other types of professions and disciplines. It says arrange contents of the buttons horizontally or in the left menu. I find if the further you move away from the question in your placement, the more a student will get lost, and it's better that you try to keep those buttons as close as humanly possible to the original question, so that they don't even have to move, very much to get to those questions. Then down below, description. You notice the word continuous here. That is, there's only one button that's going to be showing up next, which should be the continue button. It could have been a number of buttons, but when they hit continue, the jump is to your blood alcohol concentration during a typical drinking episode. And then you can have a drop-down menu here, so it can tell you where do you want it to go to. And again, it's just like lesson, where do you want it to go? Again, it's conditional on which button you press in the array. So the content page, content button 1 is 0 or none. That jumps to feedback page 0, drinks per week, and then there's information about, like, okay, well, that's actually, if you chose this, then your drinking is fairly healthy. You're probably, what you experienced when you got your citation might have been an isolated episode. Had you had more, it's still, it may have something about it's still illegal for you to drink because you're under 21. Content button 2, or button 2 is 1 to 7 drinks. There's feedback. It'll go to the feedback page. So you can see there's 5 different feedback pages that you have to create. And so and each one of those likely is going to wind up to be a different color in sticky notes. And then you can just lay out your array, and hopefully you can see that. Answer to link 2. Okay, so this is just a close-up, and you notice that content of button 2, 3, 4, and 5 have not been displayed because we're putting nothing in there. We're only going to continue it to go to this one. So you can make it jump to a single page. And you don't have to have all those other content pages. Okay, well, that's pretty much it. And what we're finding is that we've taken, this is about a 20-minute, this is actually a separate lesson that we can reproduce in all of our different courses. So what I do is I put this particular self-assessment at the beginning of all my lessons for the liver transplant course that I developed for a university hospital university setting for where they do transplants, for a community college, for a university in the California university system where they use my course for people who live in a dorm and they're heavy partiers and they get caught with alcohol all the time, or for people who have stopped drinking altogether but need to take a look at, what did my drinking cost me? It's just, you can apply it to a lot of different populations. So some of the populations can be identified. There are some populations that are considered low risk, some medium risk, and some high risk. The high risk ones are the ones that have repeated problems with alcohol. Medium risk may have had only one or two issues with alcohol. But the low risk may have had a citation or their parents caught them with alcohol or whatever, and they are now required to do something either by the school, by the community, or by law enforcement. So hopefully, I'd like to open that up for lessons. I don't know how we are on time. I think we have plenty of time for questions. So Shane, do you want to open it up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just while I got the chance, let me just say thank you, Tom, for sharing that. It was some awesome information in there, and yeah, it's really good. I actually remember hearing this. I think last year's iMoot or somewhere. I know I've been involved in this before, but always a lot of interesting information in this. If people want to ask questions, I guess you can type them in the chat, or you can click on your mic and ask as well. Or Tom, you can open up people's mics as well if you wanted to.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about the construction of this? There are teachers and students. Yes, we have done usability testing with teachers and students. I can disclose to you, the University of Santa Barbara is one of my clients, but we don't have any contract with them. And what they did was they did due diligence with us. They actually said how I got referrals from them was they are the ones that have residence hall. They got two of them, and they were using their own internal program. And what they would do is that a lot of the students would get, as they do, would get caught with alcohol in their room. So they have to go through a procedure where they get put on probation. They have to take a course. They have to get an assessment. And so what they did was their RAs, their residents, I don't know what the A stands for, the residence hall folks, actually, we logged in 3 or 4 of them, and they took our course, and they liked ours the best. And they actually made some changes. They modified the self-assessment to making it probably about 10 minutes rather than the full 20 minutes. And we typically send an email and ask any comments, and they said, well, we don't have any complaints. And actually for us, that's pretty, and when they don't complain about the course, we see that as a good sign. So that's about as scientific as I've gotten for feedback on usability. I do know that I go back every now and then and I take the course myself. And then after I have been on so many other course sites, and I'm noticing that more and more people are doing videos, and that's kind of the direction I want to head. So we want to embed a video and then maybe show a scenario of people drinking or decision, for example, people going to a party or being offered something, and then we would say, what decision would you make, and then give them the various branch table choices or the content pages choices. So I still am pretty busy with a lot of clientele from. I actually specialize in people who go to one state we call it. You go to California on vacation and come back on probation. That's sort of our motto. So what we do is we provide courses for people who get in trouble in one state but live in another, and we're getting more and more acceptance by various different courts who 10 years ago thought that I was the devil incarnate because we don't do anything online because it just doesn't work. And now there's more and more studies that are coming out that say that interventions that are self-administered can be just as powerful in changing behavior as those that are done directly in person. So there's, that research has certainly built. Okay, anybody else? Thanks. That's the first time I've ever been called brilliant, Natalie. Thank you. I've admired your work as well. I'd like to maybe talk to you about getting more gamified. Thank you.
I thought I'd just jump in and say a quick hello, even though my voice is playing up on me and I might sound like a man or a frog, but thanks very much for that presentation. And I finally got to catch up on your presentation from last year. That was not in my time zone, and finally got it up on YouTube, and really liked your philosophies and the use of gamification principles. And that last comment you made about the difference between self-administered interventions. I like that phrase, and I think that applies to all learning, that if the learner feels in control of setting their own goals and getting adequate feedback, that's a really powerful way of behaviour change, which is what education basically is for any topic.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that as well. About 5 years ago, I discovered the internal motivation that people have to succeed online, and I think you've done a presentation on, the internal versus external motivation. But what I found, and here I am getting people that are court ordered. You think that they're going to be very resentful, angry. Well, to some degree they are. But once they got started in my course, because we consciously chose not to be confrontational and preachy, and just let them make choices, they would want to, after they finished their course, they would actually say, yeah, thank you for my certificate. Can I go back in there and try to improve my grade? This was after they got their certificates. So I felt like I really stumbled onto something, and then I realized that's that internal motivation. They're doing it because they really want to.
That's fantastic. I think that's a perfect example of an extrinsic system building an intrinsic desire that's taken over any external system. And in Gabe Zickerman's workshop, he used 2 examples to explain just exactly what gamification is and how it is different to games, which is still a subtle difference people don't always get quickly. And the 2 examples that he gave that really gelled it for me was Alcoholics Anonymous and Weight Watchers, that they're personal goals that people can achieve on their own, that if you put a framework in place that has information and feedback and achievable steps one at a time, then people who can't achieve that from their own internal power and understanding can work through that program and change their life and behaviour with a framework around them that provides the feedback.
Yes, and the evidence keeps mounting on the self-administered courses. And initially I thought, oh, how am I going to, I went to graduate school and I learned how to get people and get them to change their behavior. And I had always heard the word resistance until I realized that, no, you just got bad content. The client is not resistance. They're really not in denial. You just designed a bad module. And then once you design the module correctly and the content appropriately to reach, what motivated them, I realized, if they're asking me to go back in, whatever I've done is working. I don't know what happened. but I better write it down next time. So, and I'm fighting a cold as well, and I certainly sympathize with you.
Well, thanks very much for sharing all of your fantastic work.
Thank you, and if you have any questions or interest at all, I'm happy to talk with you at any time. I actually have Big Blue Button installed on a server at my office, and so it's my own personal. So if anybody wants to, I'd like to stress test my server and see how many people could get online. So if you ever want to do what I would call a Big Blue Button open house, I'm happy to sponsor that.
Have you ever come across Carrie Vitti in these iMoot sessions, Tom?
I have, yes.
Yeah, we've been talking about those types of open house sessions for discussion, and we don't have Big Blue Button on our server yet, so I'll run that by Carrie, and we might take you up on that offer.
But yeah, and it's secure because it's in my office. I don't have it on a hosting service. It's just right on one of my old servers, and it's pretty reliable. And I'm really looking forward to the new Big Blue Button coming out.
It's been fantastic through iMoot. I'm looking forward to getting to know it better myself, and I was going to try to install it and configure it in between everything else I'm doing, so that would be much better if we could branch out and share resources.
Happy to do that, and I have a tech that's very helpful, so let me know. Again, thanks to everybody, and if you have any questions or concerns or interest, I've just put, the slide shares up on, or my slides are up on SlideShare. You can see the link, and you can contact me directly through email or on Twitter. Thanks again. Anybody else? Oh, yes, a free version of that. Stuart, I'm happy to do that. Are you there? Okay. Do I just go to Free Moodle and put it on? Let me know how to do that. Okay. All right. I'll drop you a line. Okay, Shane, is that about it?
Hi, Tom. Yes, thank you very much once again for presenting. And yeah, if you're happy with that, we can wrap it up there.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up. And once again, thanks. And am I the last presenter?
You are the last presenter for iMoot. The only session to go now is our closing session. We're announcing competition winners and a few thanks, and we let everyone put their webcams on as well. So yeah, join us.
Hey, ask Vinny to give me to make a badge for me, would you?
I can do. He's probably a bit caught up right now. He's just preparing for that last session.
Yeah. I'd like to have the honor of being the last presenter, though.
Yeah, last presenter badge. I'll talk to him about it.
Okay, thanks, Shane.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom.
Okay, bye-bye.
You are currently the